Hello, good evening, and welcome everybody to the February 2nd Wednesday of the Noble Manhattan's Adolescent and Child Coaching Support Group. I am your host, Ian, and we're delighted to have with us today Jeremy. Jeremy Glyn is an expert in a slightly different field, perhaps to what we do, but what we're trying to do with this coaching support group is to bring in other ideas. Bring in people who are working in the same sector, whether it be parental, whether it be children or adolescent coaching, or something to do with that, in order to be able to broaden people's minds and also to get us all working together to support the generations that are growing up. That's the adolescents and the children, because by doing that, the more we can support them, the better adults that they're going to be. And they're the ones who are going to be ruling the world after all. So it's important to us that we get it right as far as they're concerned. The way we're going to go about this today, as we did last month, is it's effectively going to be a sort of a chat show. Rather than just asking Jeremy to spout forth for 35 minutes or so, we will go through a little sort of question and answering, if you like. And if you have any questions for Jeremy or any comments that you want to state while we go through it, please put them on the chat. I will be watching it. And if we can sort of feed them in, then I will do so. And after about 35, 40 minutes, we'll open up to more general questions and perhaps discussion. And we'll see how it goes from there. So on that basis, Jeremy, welcome. You come well recommended from the International Authority for Professional Coaching and Mentoring, and I have sat in front of a mirror and practiced that. And you have a slightly different approach in the kinesiology. I nearly couldn't get that word out earlier. And it's really interesting to know what's your journey as to where you've got, because you say you've been coaching for 30, 35 years. That takes us before the term was almost invented, or in this context. So we'd love to hear more about your background and why you are, or how you are where you are now.
Thank you. There are two things I want to be careful of today. Not talking too fast, because I potentially can talk extremely fast, and that's not very helpful. And the second thing I want to be careful of is not banging on. I live on my own, and when I get a chance to speak, it's very, very hard sometimes to get me to shut up. And I could answer that one question you've asked already and take about 10 minutes over it, and that would be an absolute waste. So in terms of how I got to where I am, I've been self-employed since 1975. When I started the business, I decided that wasn't, well, I'd done enough of that, if you like, in about 83, and wanted a multiple, it was called a portfolio person, doing about 5 different jobs. And one of the things I became was a very qualified complementary therapist. And I was the first person in Europe to teach a particular branch of kinesiology, which we'll probably come back to later. Kinesiology is a blend of Eastern and Western medical thinking, and is about helping you physically and emotionally to be in a balanced condition. It does an awful lot more than that, but that's a brief summary. And I was really enjoying that and loving teaching it. And then I was happily introduced to the work of an American institute that was teaching people about practical applications of cognitive psychology. And I won't bore you with the why and wherefore, but I realized that the two things, linking the kinesiology and the psychology together, would enable me to do far, far more with clients. And it took me quite a long time for that penny to drop. But since about 2016, I've been linking these two things into what I now call mindset priming. And that's the journey of how I got to where I am now in a briefest summary I've probably ever managed.
Well, thanks, Jeremy. It's always amazing to me as to how people got to where they are. I always reckon I'm now in my third career, and I wish I'd never had my second. Some people say I never actually, I'm in my second childhood. I tell them I haven't actually left my first. But there's some of your in your signature, I noticed that there's a number of sort of post-nominals which I had great difficulty in trying to decipher. I think I've got one of them. I think AFC stands for Accredited Fellow Coach, which I'm hoping that's right, because that's the highest accolade for the IAPCNM. Some people would say it stands for the Air Force Cross, but
I'm sure other people can come up with a less complimentary solution, but the one you mentioned is the right one, yes.
ITEC?
That was an International Therapy Education Council or something. I passed an exam of theirs many years ago, about 35 years ago. And the FKF, I'm a fellow of the Kinesiology Federation, or an honorary fellow, I think I'm actually. The Kinesiology Federation was something I helped to get started with. I was head of one kinesiology in the UK, and there were about 4 or 5 different kinesiologies at the same time. And we were all trying to achieve a similar thing. Everyone had their own slightly different training, and we thought this is not very good for students. So we formed a group called the Federation, and the Federation has a basic training. So if anybody wanting can do a basic training and then go into whatever branch of kinesiology they want to, which is much healthier for them. And that sort of went very well, and it's still going, and they very kindly made me an honorary fellow. So that's what the FKF is.
Which leads us very nicely onto the K there, doesn't it? Kinesiology. I've nearly got it right. I think I'm still working on it. I nearly got it right. Kinesiology, what is it?
Well, as I mentioned briefly, it's a blend. The simple thing to say is it's a blend of Eastern and Western medical thinking. And I could bang on, as I did this morning, having coffee with someone for quite a long time about it, and that's not really going to help me for what we're here for tonight. But what kinesiology uses, let me take this bit of it, because this is one of my pet subjects. What kinesiologists use, as do a number of other therapists these days. Sorry if I'm waving, I've got a broken collarbone, so my arm doesn't move quite as I would like it to at the moment. Kinesiologists use something called muscle response testing, which some of you may well have come across and used. Muscle response testing, whereby I literally will sort of press on an arm of the client I'm working with, gives me responses from the client about what I can do for them. Muscle response testing, their subconscious, in other words, the client's subconscious knows if something is out of balance in their system, mentally or physically. Quite straightforwardly. Their subconscious, in terms of coaching, let's bring it into what we hear about, their subconscious also knows any ways in which they'd like their life to be better or happier than it is. And it also knows what's going on in the back of someone's mind that's sabotaging their success and happiness at the moment. The subconscious knows all of that, of course. Everyone's subconscious has got to be aware of their own client's system. And this muscle response testing allows their subconscious to tell me what's out of balance and what I can do to put it into balance. So if you extend that again into the coaching world, which is what a lot of us are here for, you probably can't see it, but the sign behind me says mindset priming, which is what I created. Thus for coaching, for what Colour did for black and white television, it adds a whole new dimension. Well, no one nowadays understands what black and white television is or why it's varied with colour, but it does add a whole new dimension because, as you say, I'm a fellow coach, the highest sort of qualification of coaching you can have. And we all know you ask questions in the right way and you help clients to say consciously what they'd like their life to be like compared to what it is. And they consciously can dig at and you can help them find out what's going on that's stopping them doing it. And that's absolutely fine, except none of the answers are the answers they need to hear. Because those answers are different from the answers their subconscious would give. So what I've been trumpeting for ages, and I'll shut up in a moment, is that if coaches were to use muscle response testing and add that to their repertoire, they would help their clients get at the answers that the clients really needed to hear from their subconscious. So that's taken you from kinesiology into mindset priming, and we've already had 10 minutes, so it's probably long enough on my introductions on those.
Okay.
But I'll keep going in any direction you'd like me to. I'm absolutely open to talking about it.
So you're leading me through the questions, which is wonderful because, of course, you're now talking about mindset priming. Explain more. Explain more.
Okay, let's give you. I mean, I try and make it practical. When I'm teaching people or working with people, I can bang on theoretically for ages, but if I actually give examples that people can relate to or talk about psychological concepts, I think it's very helpful for people. Flick back a moment. When I was running these psychology workshops, I used to do that for businesses, and I would be having a 4 or 6 day workshop with the boardroom of a company, taking them through these practical applications of psychology. And if it was a 6-day program, the first 3 days would be about personal applications of the psychology, and the next 2 would be about corporate applications. And boardroom after boardroom turned around after 4 days or 6 days and said, why did no one teach with this at school? Why did no one teach with this at business school? So if you like, what they were saying was those concepts were so important to understand how the mind works and how we limit our aspirations and how we limit our successes. If we understood that when we were younger, wouldn't that be wonderful? And now I hope I'm coming back to why what I know and what I teach might be relevant to the sort of audience we've got here tonight, because we are all, I think, in the business of being very interested in helping young people start life with an approach and a way of thinking and a way of using their minds that's going to help them be happier and fulfilled and have high self-esteem and things like that. I'm not sure if I've answered the question you asked, but is that going to be okay for now?
Yeah, okay. I mean, yeah, that does help to try and understand the sort of the mindset priming, because of course, as you say, the priming perhaps is the word here, and you've mentioned supporting children and supporting the young, because it is exactly what this organization, this coaching support group is about. But it works both ways. By supporting the adults, we can support the youngsters, and that's perhaps what we're all trying to do. Now, going back a little bit to kinesiology and the subconscious, how does that work quite so well with the younger members, because perhaps their subconscious is not quite so well developed?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, I worked with quite a lot of younger people as well as with sort of adults of all ages. There was a time I did a lot of work with dyslexic people, and many of those were children, and some of them would be sort of 4 and 6 years old, and it worked perfectly well with them. I would just put out there on that subject, if any of you know, doesn't matter what country you're in, if any of you know a youngster, or an adult for that matter, who doesn't read because they can only go syllable, if that's all they can do when they read, send them to me, get them in touch with me, get them to ring me up or Zoom call me. If they're not reading like you and I do in 15 minutes, I'm very disappointed. The stuff I'm sort of talking about, kinesiology can do that for someone, and it's life-changing.
Okay. Well, kinesiology, even over, I mean, you talk about kinesiology being a sort of a practical application, but you're talking about going over Zoom.
I can do it, but and others. This isn't special to me. Kinesiology can be done remotely if people know enough and want to do it, yes. Right,
okay. So you just laid down a challenge. So if anybody knows of anybody who can, who knows somebody who's having difficulty learning to read from whatever reason, Jeremy's the person to contact.
It might I could play you a tape recording that I made. You asked about, does this work with young people? I'd play you a tape recording if I had it to hand. I don't.
Yeah.
And I think I don't actually have their permission to broadcast it, but it's so long ago I don't remember. They were a brother and sister, 4 and 6 years old. And to start with, they were going, and I recorded the whole thing. So they were reading from Winnie the Pooh, and they were going syllable. And then we did this exercise that really doesn't take very long. And I recorded each in turn. They did it, and the younger one went first, who I think was maybe they were 6 and 8 rather than 4 and 6. It doesn't matter. Let's say they were 6 and 8, and the younger, let's say the boy was 6, read completely fluently. And halfway through it, you hear him whispering, "I don't believe this." Absolutely quick. And then his elder sister came next and recorded her stumbling through the word C, word reading. And then we did the correction again. And she didn't just read fluently, she gave each of the animals in Winnie the Pooh a different voice, a different accent. I mean, it's an amazing tape to listen to. Anyway, that's that. So it works with younger people too.
Well, one thing I hope you're going to do is, following this coaching support group, is to send me that recording, because I'd love to be able to post it for you. That's for sure. That's for sure. Cool.
Well,
Okay.
it's something I remember, and it was very special to see that. The last person I did it with, incidentally, was in her 30s. I mean, it's not something that just can only work with us. We've talked enough about that. Let's get back to the psychological session. Well, I think
it's fascinating to hear stories like this, because we sometimes as adults we stumble from situation to situation, and then we hear a sort of a seemingly miraculous story like that. It fills me with enjoyment, with I don't know, with gratitude. I don't know, but.
I mean, that's why I love what I do and why I still do it. And I've helped. Let's go back to a different bit of the.
Okay.
What do we want to do?
Okay. So this is all wonderful stuff. But how important for you is the development of, let's say, kindness? Because we talk about kindness, we talk about gratitude. A lot with mindfulness and things like that, and these are sort of highly important things these days. Are they transient? Are they here to stay? I don't know. What's the next best thing? But we talk about gratitude. Some people think gratitude is absolutely wonderful. Others will poo-poo it. What's your view?
Okay, I'll if I may link that to some other things and try and give. For the first time tonight, probably something useful and helpful to the audience we've got.
Oh, I think we've already had something useful and helpful, so just add to it.
And let me give credit to where I got it from. There's a man called Father Bob Spitzer, and you can still see him on YouTube to this day. Sadly, I think he's been blind for a while, but I knew him could see perfectly well. And he's a Jesuit priest, and he's a wonderful speaker. And I heard him first talking to a serious conference, and there were about 200 or more fairly successful business people, and they were spellbound because he was talking about happiness, as in, I don't remember whether it was Plato or Aristotle. I ought to look that up. And he had 2 hours. I've got probably about 2 minutes. But the originals of the Greeks thought there were 4 kinds of happiness, 4 levels of happiness, and the first was a sense of self-indulgence, and that might be your first really nice glass of wine, and that's but it doesn't last long, and you don't get the same buzz until you have a glass of wine that's better than that one. Oh yeah, the same old wine doesn't give you the same excitement, so it doesn't last long. The second level is the sense of achievement, and that's fine, but if you're a male or female, if you're a cricketer and you take a wicket when you're bowling, oh, wonderful, my first wicket. But you don't get the same buzz again until you get a hat trick. It's going to be better the next time to get that same buzz. So that level of happiness doesn't last very long. And then he said the third level of happiness is the happiness we get from doing things for other people. And we all know about that. I think we all recognize that everybody really gets pleasure from helping other people. And I'm coming towards grateful in a minute. And the fourth level, which he was very clearly at and involved with, was sort of doing things for the greater good, whatever you consider the greater good to be, whatever your religion would tell you the greater good was, etc. And he explained about all of those in much greater depth, obviously, than I've got now time to. But then he really intrigued me, because he said people's expectation is that the doctors and the nurses and teachers and priests who spend their lives doing things for other people must therefore be the happiest people. And he said, actually, they're not necessarily happy people. And everyone was sitting up at that. He said, because some of them only focus on level 3 or level 4. And he said his belief was absolutely that to be truly happy, we all need to allow ourselves a sense of indulgence, and a sense of achievement. So often, especially in England, I'm not sure our audience may be from all over the place, but in England, if someone is paid a compliment, you would normally hear, oh, no, no, really, it wasn't me, it was nothing. People brush away compliments and people pay them compliments. And that's okay, so long as inside their own head, they're saying, yeah, right, I really did do a good job then. Yes, I am really good at that. But we tend not to do that so much. And at the end of his lecture, and write this down, please, if you want to, he had a suggestion about what you could do when you're putting your children to bed. And this has always really got to me, because throughout my life, throughout my childhood, my self-esteem and confidence was non-existent. My bad self-esteem is still influencing me at the age of nearly 77. Yes, I've overcome a lot of it. I've got a lot better with it, but I keep realizing, I keep coming across instances where the self-esteem is still an issue. So I love this particular thing. And the idea is that it's a way of gently almost ensuring that as a child grows up, it's got good self-esteem, good confidence and optimism. What a lovely thing to give a child. So the first question you might ask the child is, what do you really enjoy about today? And you hope they don't say kicking hell out of somebody in the playground, because you let them sort of wallow in it and go in and really sort of remind themselves what fun it was. And then you could ask them, what were you successful at today? And they'll talk about it. Might be something of some sport they played or some test they did at school. And there are all sorts of questions like, did anybody help you today? Did you say thank you? Coming back to the gratitude. And you get them talking about good things, good things, good things. And what are you looking forward to tomorrow? And psychologically, if they've just had their head full of nice ideas, nice memories of good times, good experiences, good successes, they will come up with something they're looking to enjoy tomorrow or expecting to enjoy tomorrow. So they go to sleep feeling good about tomorrow. And if this happens, you don't want to do all the questions all the night, so you may not ask questions every night, but if it's a fairly regular dosage that they get, they literally just get into the habit of remembering and acknowledging and thinking about and enjoying successes, thinking about pleasures, thinking about people they helped and how people helped them, and making sure that they were grateful to that. And it's so simple. So simple. And that's a funny story perhaps to end up with, because I tend to be rather light about things, even if they're serious. There's a lovely story of a couple who'd been doing this with their children. And it worked very well. The children were going on very well and developing this confidence and optimism and things. And they were having tea, the mother and children. The father was late from work, or late back from work. And he eventually arrived in the middle of tea. And the son, aged about 10, turned around and said, "Oh, nice to see you, Dad. What do you enjoy about your work today?" "And where were you successful today, Dad?" So it's fun. So that might be something that would help you with any children that you have, or indeed help you to help other people with their children. Zip. I'll stop there.
Personally, I think that was something that I wish I'd known some 40 years ago, when my first children were around, and perhaps I can pass this on to my children for my grandchildren's sake, because I like the idea of it. I think it's absolutely wonderful.
It's very simple, and it won't appeal to everybody, and people will just work out their own language that they want to use in their questions and say, "What about?" Yeah, absolutely.
I think though we do as a nation, certainly in the United Kingdom, probably elsewhere, it's always a case of trying to get the conversation going with a teenager who's just sort of going every now and then, as they come back from school, is saying, how did you get on at school today? Which is almost going to invoke the "it was rubbish" approach. But just turning that around and just seeking for the gratitude is very interesting.
But that's part of the.
It's almost very obvious as well. But
it's also linked in the coaching world, because learning how to be a coach, which at least one of you was wanting to know more about, is learning which questions to ask to get the client thinking on the right directions to come back in the way you wanted. I can just see that someone in the chat room was wanting to know the name of the person, and I was going. Let me give it to you again. He's Father Bob Spitzer, Spitzer. Father Bob Spitzer, SPI. I hope he's still alive. I haven't seen him for quite a long time. I've seen him on YouTube for quite recently. But, so Father Bob Spitzer, Spitzer, if people want to look at him. You'll find YouTube talk about all sorts of things, but that's who it was.
Let's hope he is still alive, but if not, then hopefully he lives on in the in YouTube.
Yeah, lovely man.
Which is a lovely place. And again, it's another thing that I shall be looking at. If not tonight, tomorrow. If not tonight.
Right.
So going back to children, which
Yes.
is always very difficult. And you mentioned listening as well, which is what us aspiring coaches are always trying to do. Working with children is quite a challenge. So is there anything special that we should be listening for when working with children?
Whoa. Okay, let's track back a little bit to the sort of the way the mind works.
Okay.
We, in a free-flowing way, we naturally perform and act in our daily lives in line with what's called our self-concept. Our self-concept is our subconscious's picture, knowledge, understanding of who we are, and what we do, and what we like, what we don't like, what we do well, what we don't do well, all that sort of stuff. And we just act like us naturally. And our self-concept has been built up. It's a mixture of our self-efficacy, which is what we believe we can do, and that gets into what we aspire. We may not get time to look at that today. Our self-image, which is, there we go, that's our self-image, that's us, and we behave like us, and around that is our comfort zone. And our self-image is very often built up by our self-talk, what we say about it. I'm useless at this, I don't like that. I mean, we could stop and have a little game and exercise at any point somebody wants to illustrate these things, but we don't need to necessarily, unless that's sort of to help people. So the self-talk is what the child's self-talk is something that's very important to listen to. If you listen to what a child is saying about themselves, and at an extreme level, somebody's self-talk can indicate if they've got very low self-esteem, or it can indicate if they've got quite healthy self-esteem, if you understand the psychology of it and you're listening for it. And so clearly, if you have your own children or are helping children, if you're a teacher or a mentor or whatever it might be, if you were to hear that a child's self-esteem was sounding pretty wobbly, that's a sort of red flag warning sign to yourselves to really seek to help the child with that self-esteem, either by encouraging them to recognize the successes they have and the ability they have or whatever. So that's one way I would listen to, or say encourage you to listen to their talk and what they're saying. Another is, oh gosh, there's so much of this stuff. There are a lot of ladies here. I can't see very many of them, and therefore I can't see many hands. I can see 5 ladies. If anyone else would like to put their picture up just for this one, or else use their gadget to wave a hand at me. If you've had trouble finding your keys in your handbag, anybody, male or female, could you just put your hand up or indicate with your computer whether you have trouble finding your keys in your handbag? Well, okay, we've got a few popping up. Well, let's look at, very honest of you, thank you. And you're not, this happens every time I give a talk. I gave a talk once on self-efficacy in the workplace to the psychology department of a very well-known London merchant bank. They were more interested in finding their keys in their handbag than they were in the psychology in the workshop, I can tell you. Because it's got applications to everyday life. And this is coming back to what a child might be saying. It used to intrigue me, sorry, this is all about me, but it's where I learned from and how I learned, and that's where it's all come from. None of it's my stuff, I just learned it from other people. I used to be intrigued back in my younger days when I lived in London. If I took someone out to supper, I'd drive them home. Maybe, I'd open the door to let them in, but if I just dropped them outside their own door and they were going, maybe very rudely, I didn't get out and open the door for them. I'd stay in the driver's seat. and they've been rummaging in their handbag, looking at me or looking at the ceiling of the car, saying, I can't find my keys. I thought, fine, I very odd things, whose keys are sharp and jangly and noisy, and how on earth can't you find them in a small bag, for goodness sake? And then I learnt the psychology stuff. And I thought, oh my goodness me. So those of you who put your hand up, stay tuned. After I learnt the psychology stuff, anytime a lady, it always was a lady I was taking out, I could have taken a man out, the same thing. I, of course, understand that. In this day and age, it may be a man who can't find his keys, of course. But in those days, if a lady was literally looking at me and looking at, can't find my keys, I would say, would you humor me? Would you take your hand out of your bag? Will you now look me in the face and say out loud, I'm going to put my hand in my bag and take my keys out. I'm going to put my hand in my bag and take my keys out. Oh! And there are the keys. So what was different? Part of our mind's job is to make us look sane, or turn it around, to stop us looking stupid. If I say I can't pick up this glass of water, I look very stupid if I then pick up a glass of water. So if I'm hypnotized until, this weighs a ton, I won't be able to pick it up. It's one of those fun things. And this is what was going on with the car keys. When they're saying, I can't find my keys, their subconscious stopped them even looking in the bag. They were looking at the roof of the car. They were looking at me. Can't find my keys. The minute they said, I'm going to put my hand in my bag and take my keys out, they just took their keys out. Because there was no reason for the subconscious to sample it. You try it, I promise you. It's such fun. But so what we're talking about is, if you have, of course, there are things we can't do yet as we're growing up as a child. I can't tie my laces yet. I can't do this. Oh, sorry, interesting. I said yet. This is one of the important words. There are little words you want children to use or teach them to use. I can't tie my shoelaces. I still can't tie my shoelaces. I can't ride a bicycle. Encourage them to say, I can't ride a bicycle yet. If they're saying, I can't ride a bicycle, I can't cook, I can't this, I can't the other, I can't hit a tennis ball, they're building their self-image. Their self-image their subconscious will believe what they say. So over and over and over and over again, somebody says, I'm a useless cook, I can't play ping pong, I can't whatever it might be. The subconscious gets it. Okay, I'm hopeless at ping pong and I can't cook and I can't do this, I can't do that. Okay, that's me, fine. And we then live like me. We don't want to live like me with I can't do this, I can't do that. But if we say, I can't do it yet, that's saying to the subconscious, it's going to be different, I'm going to do it. So yet is a useful word to teach people. Another couple of words, if you're talking with someone and coaching someone, I am banging on, but I suppose that's what I'm here for, really. If you're coaching somebody, and they say, oh no, I've never done that, never managed to do that. 2 words to add, until now. Really important words. I've never done that. I've never been able to do that until now. I had one client, I've had lovely time. I work with homeless people and unemployed people and people with terminal cancer and all sorts of lovely stuff that you can help give them something to positively look forward to that they're enjoying. And this lovely, lovely lady, I did a lot of work with, and working with her, it was so important to get until now, because she was so full of, she's had this terrible time and a really tough time in all sorts of areas of her life. No. It's been until now it's been a terrible time. Until now it's been bad experiences. Until now that hasn't happened. And it came up a lot. And she came for one session with me. I could have worn them tonight. And she gave me a pair of socks with until now written on the socks, knitted into the socks. It was very sweet. So those are important words for people who want to make change happen. If you allow them to keep saying, I can't do it, they'll never get their keys out of their handbag because they're telling themselves, I can't do it. So you asked me about listening to children or listening to people. That's a little bit, if you like, on what's so important to listen to. their self-talk, whether it's just low self-esteem, or whether they're programming their, what I call their mental handbrake. So if they're constantly saying, I can't do it, I've never done it, they're just building up a mental handbrake that can affect them for years. Is it?
Well, that's, I know the yet one. I use that myself, and it's certainly something you can use for anybody. It doesn't. You don't have to be a you don't have to be a coach to be able to use that. But nor do you have to be talking to an adult. You can be talking to a youngster and things like that. And perhaps it's one of those things that we really ought to, as parents, know and start really, really early, so that they don't develop into this this horrendous whirlpool of poor self-esteem. Until now, I like that one. I haven't come across that one before. Have you got another gem there, or is it just those two?
Well, I used to run 6-day programs, so I've probably got a few more. There was okay. Yes, okay. Our mental handbrake has 4 main ingredients: our beliefs, our expectations, our habits, and our attitudes. And I'm not going to bang on about all of those. But I give you one, I think, fascinating example of what beliefs can do for you. And we'll see how we go after that one. There was an amazing researcher in America. I'm going to have to look his name up because I fractured my skull last year and my memory is not what it was, and it's amazing I can do what I can with the double fracture of the skull. Rosenthal, I'm sure his name was Rosenthal, and some of you may have heard of him. And he had a way of researching things. This is what he had a reputation for. And he would go to a school and say, do you want to know who your budding stars are who aren't performing properly yet and are just being idle or not working or something? Oh, yes, please, we'd like to know who our superstars are. So he would give them a questionnaire to give to each child, and the child filled them in, and he was given all the answers back. And he didn't look at them. After 10 days or so, he went back to school. Let's say there were 40 tests there or something, from people in a form. He would pick 3 at random, without looking at them, and say, these are your 3 superstars. These are the people who should be at the top of the school. And those 3 children rose to the top of the school within 6 months, if not less, and stayed there. Woo! The teachers now believed this is a superstar person it's worth paying special attention to. The child became aware, each of the children in question became aware, oh, okay, oh, right, this teacher obviously believes I can do better and do things, and they're helping me enjoy it. Their peers in the classroom noticed they were getting special attention. Oh, well, they obviously know a lot, so they began asking the top 3, can you help me with this, please? So that, again, helped the children believe. So the belief in each of the top 3 changed, the belief in the teachers changed, and there was the result. What I think is quite, he also did this in school, in businesses and industries. It's absolutely fascinating experiment in what happens if you change people's perception in that kind of way. Being in America, he was sued by the parents of the other children because they hadn't done as well. And I don't quite know how that one ended up. But it's a wonderful example, I think, of how, as an adult, or if you own a business and something, and someone comes in for an interview, you can latch on very quickly to, I know what this sort of bothers about. I can spot talent, and you will treat that person in line with your belief, and it may be absolute nonsense. And some children's futures may get seriously limited by people who get an attitude about, this one's going to be a sicko all his or her life, or whatever it might be. So that's one example of it. And I now can't remember where else I was going with that. Doesn't matter. Okay, so
a couple of short words, was it?
You wanted gems. Oh, okay, yes. Yeah, so let's go to the other one. Thank you. From attitudes. I can get quite rude and vulgar, and I'm not being rude and vulgar in this case, but I'm going to talk about, we all know, don't we, that there are 4-letter words, they're called in English, 4-letter words that are rude to use or not good to use. Yep. I'm not going to mention any of them, but you know what I mean by 4-letter words. Well, when I teach people, I like sometimes to do things in a way that will make what I'm saying memorable. There are 4 words I want you to exclude from your own personal vocabulary. 4, 5, I think. 5 words I want to exclude from your personal vocabulary. Why? Okay. Who am I looking at? I don't know. Let's find a. Well, so nobody feels I'm messing about. Ian, let's start with you. Imagine, if you could, that you were in the same room as me, and I asked you to put your right hand up against my left hand. Yep. And then I start pushing you hard. What would you do?
I push back.
Your hand wouldn't move. And I could push harder and harder, and your hand wouldn't move. Why? Because we don't like being pushed around by people.
Okay.
Don't you push me around, thank you. Oh, no. Well, I could have another hour after this.
Not tonight.
I once sent a list of 40 or 50 of the psychological concepts to about 300 people who'd been on some of my workshops, and said, which of these are the key ones for you? Which are the top 10 for you, please? So I wanted to release a sort of mini program. And I got about 25% replied, which I was very pleased with. And there was one concept, only one concept, that everybody who replied put in their top 10. And this is what I'm talking about now. So you might want to write this one down. And it's called creative avoidance. Wonderful phrase. Yes, I know the washing up needs doing, dear, but I just want to go and do this over here. There's something more interesting to do, more fun to do, and we avoid something that needs to be done because we don't like it. And that's one reason the creative avoidance comes about, is I just have an attitude about that job. I don't like it. I don't like weeding the garden. I don't like doing the washing up. I don't like cleaning the car. And we'll find something else to do that delays our need to use that thing. And that's not very successful. The answer to that one, if you don't like it, get someone else to do it, or shut up and get on with it, basically. But the other reason, the other half of creative avoidance, and the one I'm talking about tonight, and I shuddered listening to the government statements in England or in Britain about what to do when COVID came along, and when we had to isolate ourselves, and we couldn't go out, and we mustn't do this, and we had to do that. And I was shuddering, because the words that, if people try and push us around, we resist. But our subconscious also resists if we try and push ourselves around. It's called coercion. If we try and coerce other people to do something we want, they're likely to be resistant. So if you're trying to get children to do something, don't tell them, don't use these 4-letter words with the children, because you just won't succeed, probably. The language that our subconscious takes as coercive, takes as us coercing ourselves, is if we say, I have to do this. Nonsense, I've got choice. I must do it. No, that's a coercive word. I should do it. You might say that's not 4 letters. I spell it S-H-U-D, in which case it becomes a 4-letter word. I ought to do it. O-double-R-T, another 4-letter word. Have I left one out? Have to, must, should, got to, G-O-double-T. These are all seen by our subconscious as coercive words. So if we say to ourselves, I must, I should, I've got to, I ought to, or say to a child, you must do this, you have to do that, you've got to do that, their reaction is, no, thank you. And it's going to be harder to get them to do what they perhaps need to do or would be good for them to do. It's terribly simple, but it's very powerful. So what can you say instead? Well, and some people don't like this one. Some people think this is coercive for them, in which case, fine. But I think the word need is a useful word. And that's not 4 letters, it's N-E-E-E-D, of course, so it couldn't be a 4-letter word, it's absolutely fine. I need to do this. Oh, okay, so there's almost a sense of urgency coming up because it needs to be done. Okay, I'll get on with it. So, I mean, I'm doing it all much too quickly tonight, but maybe you can see what I'm talking about, and realize in yourself. I mean, write down what you creatively avoid doing sometime at the end. That's just there are things everyone knows what they creatively avoid doing, and ask yourself, well, okay, until now I've creatively avoided that. What do I want to do instead of that now? How do I want to stop creatively avoiding things? So let's move on from there. I think we're meant to have open forum by now, and I've gone on too long. But
no, not at all, because we rarely get a workshop, and so the opportunity to have a workshop is tremendous, because while it's not so much the coaching aspect, it's just the way of life. And the thing about trying to coach youngsters is that you need to be a mentor as well. You need to be able to provide them with that experience, because they've never had that sort of experience before. And the more we can actually bring the youngsters up and make sure that we don't use those words ourselves, perhaps is a very good way of supporting the others. It's not just about there is coaching and there is nothing else. It's much more a case of working the tools in together, which is, to me, really, really important. So, Jeremy, thank you so much indeed for all of that.
My workshops aren't like this. My workshops are fun, and you get little exercises to do that demonstrate what's going on, and you do things that you think are terribly simple, and you get them all wrong, and that teaches you things too. So, but no, it's great fun. So, are there any questions, or let's go see where we want to go?
Yeah, please. Well, rather than just put them in the chat box,
there are some. I see there are 4 things in the chat box. Are any of those questions, or you've got me there?
No.
Someone's saying they're bored and they've gone, or something.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah. No, she was talking about Pippi Longstocking, the book.
Oh, yeah.
Saying I don't, I haven't been able to do it until now, and producing that idea. So, anybody got any questions? Please put your hands up, or indicate somehow, or put a question in chat. Or has Jeremy either bored you into submission, or you're absolutely so gobsmacked that you can't think of anything else to say?
I'll give you one more goodie if nobody's got any questions. So I'll try and get 2 goodies in 12 minutes.
Okay, go on then.
This is hugely important. People, I mean, everything's important. I normally say take 2 or 4 days over it, I say, but okay, 1 hour. Mindset priming has 4 insights. One is getting people going in the right direction. One is help people understand their mental handbrake. One is teaching people how to use their mental sat nav, and we haven't looked at that bit, but that's another story. Getting people going in the right direction. People are very often told that their goals, any goals or aspirations they have, must be realistic. Yep, I'm seeing some nodding. What realistic very often means is that when the person, whether it's a child or an adult, it doesn't matter, sets a goal, they know how they're going to do it. They already know how to do it when they set the goal. That is very ineffective goal setting. I'll say it again. Setting a goal, only setting goals when you know already how to do it, is very ineffective goal setting. It is not putting your mind to work. What and the MDs and the businesses absolutely love this. When you understand about a filter in your brain, called your reticular activating system, or known as your RAS for short, pronounced carefully, people set goals without knowing how to do it, because they understand that if it's something they really want to do, their subconscious mind will start looking for the answers. If I can give you one corporate example, because it's a very quick example to give you, an American company building and selling computers, and they were in trouble financially, and the sales director, I was working with the board, the sales director believed they could sell 14 computers. I mean, the computers the size of a room in those, big thing. He believed they could sell 14 in a year, and his top sales team could only believe they could sell 7. And I told the board I was working with about this reticular activating system. I also told them about letting people choose their own goals rather than imposing a target on them. But we haven't got time for that one tonight. And there was a lunch break, and the sales director came back, about as white as a sort of board, but poster I've got there. And I said, "You're right." She said, "No, I'm in shock." I said, "Why?" He said, "Well, I've got my top sales team with me for lunch, and I tell them about the RAS, and I tell them about choosing their own goals, and they're not, their goal isn't 7 anymore." I said, "What is it?" He said, "It's 30. And I was trying to persuade them that they're nuts, but I couldn't. They'd more than doubled his target. And move the story on. I've only taken 3 minutes. That's quite good. I was back with them over a beer. They lots of them went through the program, and it helped them a lot, etc., etc. And I was saying to the HR director, I was saying, "Oh, it's wonderful, thank you, thank you." I said, "But what's it done for you? How have you benefited?" Okay, people are buzzing and working hard, but so what? What have you achieved? He said, "I don't know." I said, "Well, what about how many did you sell?" He said, "I don't know." They rang the sales director, who luckily was there. They'd sold 28 in the year, 4 times what they originally thought. And when they were aiming for 7, because that's all they believed they could do, their filter system was trying to find ways to sell 7, because a way of selling 10 wasn't relevant because they were aiming at 7. Does that make any sense? Once they aimed at 30, their subconscious, their RAS was really looking for, okay, how can we? And I could give you so many examples, but that's a really good example of, just this ended up. How do you stop someone being like a Walter Mitty and setting completely barking goals that are unhealthily unrealistic? You muscle test them. If you know how to muscle response testing, the client's subconscious will tell them, no, that's not realistic, that's too high. It's so simple. So muscle response testing was thoroughly researched. All sorts of experts will tell you it's rhubarb. There's a lovely lady called Anne Jensen, an Australian, who I've got to know, but we both did a presentation in the same workshop, the same sort of conference at the same day. And she spent about 2 years researching it at Oxford University. Oxford, I think, came to Oxford. And the first year's results were so extraordinary, they said, "Would you mind doing it again?" And the second year's results were just as convincing. So you might want to look at muscle response testing. Of all the things I'm talking about today, you might, and please send me emails, ring me up. While I can remember what it is I'm talking about, I love teaching it to other people. I love telling other people about it. I love helping other people to help other people.
That's,
is that a good place to end?
Very nearly, because Sala has asked, is kinesiology related to NLP?
No.
Not at all.
I've done a bit of NLP, and they're different.
Mm-hmm. Just totally different ways of doing things.
Can work well together, are probably valid, and if 2 things can't work well together, one of them is probably not valid. That wasn't very well said. Certainly on the psychology side, the psychology things that I teach are so well validated over and over and over again by one head of a psychology organization said to me, "If anybody tells you that what you're teaching doesn't fit with what they're doing isn't right." It's as simple as that. But that's psychology rather than kinesiology. The same applies to the kinesiologists can't get it wrong. If they work properly, they can't get it wrong because they're only doing what the client tells them.
Well, that's the benefit. That's the benefit of being a coach, isn't it? That all the actions on the client.
But coaches of the future will be acting on the client's subconscious, not the client's conscious. I got a wonderful nod there in the middle. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you very much for that, because I don't think it's going to happen in my lifetime necessarily. I live to about 110, but I hope to look down or look up depending where I'm going, and have a great smile on my face because I see coaches working like that all over the world.
Can you just Anna's just come in saying didn't hear if it was or not possible to do kinesiology remotely. Could you repeat on that one? I think you said you did. It could, but I'll leave you to that.
I think it's tomorrow evening. I'm working on someone in Canada.
Okay.
Who I've worked with before. Yeah.
Wow. Well, there's your answer, Anna. Right. If there's no further questions, I think we'll draw a halt there and say, Jeremy, thank you so much indeed for that. It's truly enlightening. We're all taking away, well, I am anyway, I'll speak for me rather than make a bland statement, taking away a huge amount of stuff, which I can use not only as a coach, but as a parent with almost anybody I meet, which is absolutely wonderful. And, you know, that's what I thoroughly enjoy about being a coach and doing this sort of work. You know, every day is a school day, which to me is wonderful. So what I'll do is I will let people know Jeremy's email address and how to contact him if you would like so to do. And also we will put out this recording for people who want it so they can catch up. And my last thing to do is say, Jeremy, thank you so much indeed. I look forward to round 2, which we haven't decided on yet, but perhaps later this year.
Well, I mean, I've had some lovely smiley faces looking at this, and it's so nice to see those smiles coming on people's faces. So thank you, those of you who let me see your faces and then letting them, because that's made it really nice for me too.
Okay,